readers, welcome back to Reads with Room B with me, Room B. Today we are going to be doing chapter 11 of our main read, Peter Pan. As always, I need to inform you that any and all proceeds made from the readings of these videos will be donated straight to Greater Ormond Street. I thank you again for your generosity and in using the donations link straight to Greater Ormond Street charity page. We have raised a grand total of £20 for Greater Ormond Street. So thank you very much, guys. You are helping to continue their amazing works. That being said, let's start with today's read. We are on chapter 11. "Listen then," said Wendy, settling down to her story, with Michael at her feet and 7 boys in bed. "Once there was a gentleman." "I had rather he'd been a lady," Curly said. "I wish he'd been a white rat," said Nibs. "Quiet," their mother admonished them. "There was a lady also." "Oh, Mummy," cried the first twin. You mean that there is also a lady also, don't you? She's not dead, is she?" "Oh, no." "I am awfully glad she isn't dead," said Toodles. "Are you glad, John?" "Of course I am. Are you glad, Nibs?" "Rather." "Are you glad, twins?" "We are glad." "Oh, dear," sighed Wendy. "A little less noise here," Peter called out, determined that she should have fair play, however beastly the story might be in his opinion. "The gentleman's name," Wendy continued, "was Mr. Darling, and her name was Mrs. Darling." "I knew them," said John to annoy the others. "I think I knew them," said Michael rather doubtfully. "They were married, you know," explained Wendy. "And what do you think they had?" "White rats," cried Nibs, inspired. "No, it's awfully puzzling," said Toodles, who knew the story by heart. "Quiet, Toodles. They had 3 descendants." "What is descendants?" "Well, you are one, twin." "Did you hear that, John? I'm a descendant." "Descendants are only children," said John. Oh dear, said Wendy. Now these 3 children had a faithful nurse called Nana, but Mr. Darling was angry and had chained her up in the yard, so the children flew away. "It's an awfully good story," said Nibs. "They flew away," Wendy continued, "to Neverland, where the lost children are." I just thought they did," Curly broke in excitedly. "I don't know how it is, but I just thought they did." "Oh, Wendy," cried Toodles, was one of the lost children called Toodles?" "Yes, he was." "I'm in the story! Hurrah! I am in a story, Nibs." "Hush. Now I want you to consider the feelings of the unhappy parents with all their children flown away." "Oh," they all moaned, though they were not really considering the feelings of the unhappy parents one jot. "Think of the empty beds." "Oh, it's awfully sad," said the first twin cheerfully. "I don't see how it can have a happy ending," said the second twin. "Do you, Nibs?" "I'm frightfully anxious." "If you knew how great a mother's love is," Wendy told them triumphantly, "you'd have no fear." She now had come to the part of the story that Peter hated. "I do like a mother's love," said Toodles, hitting Nibs with a pillow. "Do you like a mother's love, Nibs?" "I just do," said Nibs, hitting back. "You see," said Wendy complacently, Our heroine knew that the mother would always have to leave her window open for her children to fly back to. So they stayed away for years and had a lovely time. Did they ever come back?" "Let us now," said Wendy, bracing herself for her finest effort, "take a peep into the future." And they all gave themselves the twist that makes peeps into the future easier. Years have rolled by, and who is this elegant lady of uncertain age alighting in the London station? "Oh, Wendy, who is she?" cried Nibs, every bit as excited as if you didn't know. Can it be? Yes. No. It is. The fair Wendy! Oh! And who are the two noble, portly figures accompanying her, now grown men, to the man's estate? Can they be John and Michael? Oh, they are. Oh, see, dear brothers, said Wendy, pointing upwards. There is still a window standing open. Ah, there we are now, rewarded for our sublime faith in mother's love. So they flew to their mummy and daddy, and a pen cannot describe how happy the scene over which we will draw a veil. And that was the story, and they were pleased with it, as was the fair narrator herself. Everything was just as it should be, you see. We skip off like the most heartless things in the world, which is what children are, but so attractive, and we have an entirely selfish time, and then when we have need of special attention, we nobly return for it, confident that we shall be rewarded with it instead of a smack. And so great, indeed, was their faith in mother's love that they had felt they could afford to be callous a bit longer. There was no one who knew better than when to finish. Let me try that again, readers. There was no one who knew better, and when Wendy finished, he uttered a hollow groan. What is it, Peter? She cried, running to him, thinking he was ill. She felt him solicitously. Lower down his chest. Where is it, Peter? It isn't that kind of pain, replied Peter darkly. Then what is it? Wendy, you are wrong about mothers. They all gathered round him in a fright. So alarming was his agitation. And with fine candour he told them that what he had hitherto concealed. Long ago I had thought, like you, that my mother would always keep the window open for me. So I stayed away for many moons, and moons, and moons, and moons, and then flew back. But the window was barred, for mother had forgotten all about me, and there was another little boy sleeping in my bed. I am not sure that this was true, but Peter thought it was true, and it scared them. Are you sure mothers are like that? Yes. And so this was the truth about mothers, the toads. Still, it had best be to be careful, and no one knows so quickly as a child when he should give in. Wendy, let us go home, cried Michael and John together. Yes, she said, clutching them. Not tonight, asked the lost boys, bewildered. They knew, in what they called their hearts, that one can get on quite well without a mother, and that it is only mothers who think you can't. At once, replied Wendy resolutely, for the horrible thought had come to her. Perhaps mother is half in mourning by this time. This dread made her forgetful of what must be Peter's feelings, and she said to him rather sharply, Peter, will you make the necessary arrangements? If you wish it, he replied, as coolly as if she had asked him to pass the nuts. Not so much as sorry to lose you between them. If she did not mind the parting, he was going to show her. He was Peter, and that he didn't, and that neither did he. But of course he cared very much, and so full of wrath against the grown-ups, who, as usual, were spoiling everything, that as soon as he got inside his tree, he breathed intentional, quick, short breaths at a rate about 5 a second. He did this because there was a saying in Neverland that every time you breathe, a grown-up dies, and Peter was killing them off vindictively as fast as possible. And then, having given the necessary instructions to the Redskins, he returned home, where an unworthy scene had been enacted in his absence. Panic-stricken at the thought of losing Wendy and the lost boys, he had advanced upon her threateningly. "It will be worse than before she came," they cried. "We shan't let her go. We shall keep her prisoner. Aye, chain her up." In her extremity, an instinct told her to which of them to turn to. "Toodles," she cried, "I appeal to you." Was it not strange? She appealed to Toodles, quite the silliest one. Grandly, however, Toodles did not respond, for at that one moment he had dropped his silliness and spoke with dignity. "I am just Toodles," he said, "and nobody minds me. But on the first who does not behave to Wendy like an English gentleman, I will blood him severely." He drew back his hanger, and for an instant his son was at noon, and the others held back uneasily. Then Peter returned, and then at once he saw that they would get no support from him. He would keep no girl in Neverland against her will. "Wendy," he said, striding up and down, "I have asked the Redskins to guide you through the wood, as flying tires you so." "Thank you, Peter." Then he continued in a short, sharp voice of one accustomed to being obeyed, "Tinker Bell will take you across the sea. Wake her, Nibs." Nibs had to knock twice before he got an answer, though Tink had been really sitting up in bed and listening for some time. "Who are you? How dare you? Go away," she cried. You are to get up, Tink," called Nibs, "and take Wendy on a journey." Of course, Tink had been delighted to hear that Wendy was going, but she was jolly well determined not to be her courier. And she said so in a still more offensive language, and then she pretended to be asleep again. "She says she won't," exclaimed Nibs, aghast at such insubordination. Whereupon Peter went sternly towards the young lady's chamber. Pardon me, readers. "Tink," he rapped out, "if you don't get up and dressed at once, I will open the curtains, and then we shall see you in your negligee." This made her leap to the floor. "Who said I wasn't getting up?" she cried. In the meantime, the boys were gazing very forlornly at Wendy, now equipped with John and Michael for the journey, but by this time they were dejected, and not merely because they were about to lose her, but because they also felt that she was going off with something nice. She was going off to something nice to which they had not been invited. The novelty was beckoning them as usual. Crediting them with a nobler feeling, Wendy melted. "Dear ones," she said, "if you will all come with me, I feel almost sure I can get my father and mother to adopt you." The invitation was meant specifically for Peter, but each of the boys thinking exclusively of himself, and at once they jumped with joy. "But won't they think us all rather a handful?" Nibs asked in the middle of his jump. "Oh, no," said Wendy, rapidly thinking it out. "It will only mean having a fewer beds in the drawing room, and they can be hidden behind screens and such on the first Thursdays. Perhaps, Peter, can we go?" they all cried imploringly. They took it for granted that if they went he would go also, but they really could scarcely cared. Thus, children are ever ready when novelty knocks to desert their dearest ones. "All right," Peter replied with a bitter smile, and immediately they rushed to get their things. "Now, Peter," said Wendy, thinking she had put everything right, "I'm going to give you your medicine before you go." She loved giving them the medicine, and undoubtedly she gave them too much. Of course, it was only water, but it was out of a bottle, and she always shook the bottle and counted the drops, which gave a certain medicinal quality. On this occasion, however, she did not give Peter his draught, for just as she had prepared it, she saw the look on her face that made her heart sink. "Get your things, Peter," she cried, shaking. "No," he answered, pretending indifference. "I am not going with you, Wendy." "Yes, Peter." "No." To show her her departure would leave him unmoved, he skipped up and down the room, playing gaily on his heartless pipes. She had to run about after him, and though it was rather undignified. "To find your mother," she coaxed. Now, if Peter had ever quite had a mother, he no longer missed her. He could do very well without one. He had gone without them, and he only remembered their bad points. No, he told Wendy decisively. Perhaps she would say I was old, and I just want always to be a little boy, and to have fun. But Peter, no. And the others had to be told, Peter isn't coming. Peter not coming? They gazed blankly at him, their sticks over their backs, and on each stick a bundle. Their first thought was that if Peter was not going, he had probably changed his mind about letting them go. But he was far too proud for that. "If you find your mothers," he said darkly, "I hope you will like them." This awful cynicism of this made an uncomfortable impression, and most of them began to look rather doubtful. After all, their faces said, they were not noodles were they not noodles to want to go? "Now then," cried Peter, "no fuss, no blubbering. Goodbye, Wendy." He held out his hand cheerily, quite as if they really must go now, for he had something important to do. She had to take his hand. There was no indication that he would prefer a thimble. "Will you remember about changing your flannels, Peter?" she said, lingering over him. She was always so particular about their flannels. "Yes." "And will you take your medicine?" "Yes." And that seemed to be everything. There was an awkward pause that followed. Peter, however, was not the kind that breaks them down before other people. Are you ready, Tinkerbell?" he called out. "Aye, aye." "Then lead the way." Tink darted up the nearest tree, but no one followed her, for it was this moment that the pirates made their dreadful attack upon the redskins. Above, where all had been so still, the air was rent with shrieks and the clashes of steel. Below there was dead silence. Mouths opened and remained open. Wendy fell to her knees, but her arms were extended towards Peter. All arms were extended towards him, as if suddenly blown in his direction. They were beseeching him mutely not to desert him. As for Peter, he seized his sword. The same thought he thought he had slain the barbecue with. The lust of battle was in his eye. And that is our chapter for today. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now, folks. Keep reading. Stay safe, like, and subscribe. See you next time.